You're listening to 15 Minutes, where we feature community leaders sharing what the rest of us should know but likely don't. Hi, Chad Franzen here, one of the hosts of Share Your Voice, where we talk with top-notch law firms and lawyers about what it takes to grow a successful law practice. This episode is brought to you by Gladiator Law Marketing, delivering tailor-made services to help you accomplish your objectives and maximize your growth potential. To have a successful marketing campaign and make sure you're getting the best ROI, your firm needs to have a better website and better content. Gladiator Law Marketing uses artificial intelligence, machine learning, and decades of experience to outperform the competition. To learn more, go to gladiatorlawmarketing.com, where you can schedule a free marketing consultation. My guest today is Ann Groninger, partner at Johnson Groninger PLLC, and combines her passions for advocating for individuals and for bicycling culture in her legal practice. She began her career in 1995 as a criminal defense attorney for Cumberland County Public Defender's Office and later transitioned to private practice in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Her criminal defense experience includes several death penalty trials, including landmark cases addressing intellectual disability and the death penalty. She transitioned to personal injury and civil litigation in 1998. Her interest in bicycling advocacy grew. She co-founded North Carolina Bike Law, now part of Bike Law, and advocates for bicyclists nationwide, and regularly speaks at bicycling events promoting cyclist rights, safety, and women's bicycling initiatives. She authored the Ride Guide, clarifying North Carolina's bicycle laws for cyclists, motorists, and law enforcement, aiming to enhance safety and enjoyment for all riders. Ann, thanks so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Hey, tell me, when and how and when did you know that you wanted to become an attorney?
Probably while I was in law school. um, I went to law school because I felt like there was more. I had an undergraduate engineering degree,
Mhm.
and I felt like there was more that I could do with that than what I was seeing in the job market. So, law school sounded interesting. And, while I was there and taking different courses and clinics and whatnot, I realized that I enjoyed litigation and wanted to litigate.
Have you found that your engineering degree, even though you're not necessarily doing engineering, has been helpful for you in your career?
Yeah, it really has, especially in what I'm doing now with these. I handle a lot of bicycle crash cases
Hmm.
involving, any kind of vehicle from commercial to personal vehicles. But in any case, there's always a lot of engineering involved. And while I can't be the expert in my own case, it helps me to interact with the experts and understand what they're talking about. And then a lot of times I can figure out things by myself and then, kind of uh, get have an expert who often sometimes calls me out as being wrong, but often verifies what I've seen. But it's sort of shortcuts and being able to analyze a lot of cases and understand what happened.
As I mentioned, you are a partner at your firm. How did your partnership and even your involvement in that firm come about?
Well, my partner Valerie Johnson and I were both partners in a larger firm of about, I think it was about 8 to 10 lawyers at different times. And three of us left that firm. One has since gone in another direction, but yeah, the two of us remained. And we've been practicing together since May of 2000. So long
Oh,
time.
wow. Okay. What
Yeah.
can you tell me about your firm that kind of makes it unique?
Well, I think we are the largest women-owned law firm in North Carolina. My partner's African American. We have associate who's a member of the LGBTQ community, and another associate who's Latina and grew up and was raised by a Cuban grandmother. And so we like to consider ourselves to be a very uh, diverse and to represent multiple aspects of the community, or a diverse community.
As I mentioned, you started out doing criminal defense. What kind of
Mhm.
prompted you to transition from criminal defense to personal injury and civil litigation?
Well, I quickly realized that I couldn't do both well. Criminal defense, to earn a living in it, a lot of times involves a lot of time spent sitting in a courtroom, which takes away from a civil practice. And so I kind of gradually got into civil practice after opening my own practice, and I was doing both for a while, and eventually gave up the criminal defense, at least temporarily.
Hmm.
I am part of a team handling a post conviction death penalty case still that I've been involved in some fashion or another since 1994. So I haven't been able to let go of that case, and I don't want to. But other than that, down the road one day, I wouldn't foreclose accepting a appointment to a capital case or some major criminal case. But for the most part, my concentration's been on civil.
How did your experience, or your continuing experience, even in criminal defense, help shape your approach to representing injured individuals?
Yeah, well, the most obvious way was that I spent a lot of time in the courtroom, and a lot of people getting out of law school don't really get that opportunity. There aren't very many civil trials. In fact, I've been in courtrooms where the judge has said that, despite being on the bench for a long time, it's their first civil trial. So, being involved in criminal defense really helped me learn the rules of evidence and, understand a courtroom and how courtrooms work and what goes on during a trial.
What inspired you to become involved in bicycling advocacy?
The beginning of the inspiration was through our Bike Laws founder, Peter Wilborn, who was a lawyer in South Carolina and founded scbikelaw.com. And we met through a former partner of mine and formed North Carolina Bike Law, which grew into Bike Law nationally. But I've been a cyclist I've been passionate about bicycling my whole life and started, riding more extensively, I guess in the early or maybe the mid 90s. And
Mhm.
so when I met Peter and we started talking about forming North Carolina Bike Law, it was a really good fit. So it's been my passion for a long time, and it was great to transition my passion into my work.
Was there something about your experience in, as a cyclist that helped you become more of a advocate for maybe, victims of bicycle crashes?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of the people I represent are friends of mine or friends of friends.
Mhm.
So a lot of my practice is word of mouth. I've seen a lot of close friends go through tragedies. Anywhere from minor crashes that are scary for them and make them question wanting to continue to do that activity, to people who have lost family members and gone through very significant tragedy. So yeah, I mean, it is very personal, and it's because of my love of cycling that I'm able to be as passionate as I am about the practice.
Are there maybe some common challenges faced by victims of bicycle crashes when it comes to the legal industry?
Oh, absolutely, especially in a case like North Carolina, a state like North Carolina, where we have what's called contributory negligence. We have a pure contributory negligence. We're one of only 4 states in the country that have that law, and it's really very egregious. So if you're a victim of somebody else's negligence, but you contributed any amount, even if it's 1% to the crash, then jury will be instructed to return a verdict of zero. Whereas in other states, in South Carolina, for example, if you're 1% negligent and somebody else is 99%, then you would get 99% of your damages. So that's a huge challenge for anyone, any plaintiff in North Carolina, but I think particularly cyclists, because a lot of people feel like getting on a bike on a road is at least 1% of fault. So one thing I've had to do in my practice is spend a real lot of time figuring out how to counteract that argument and that perception.
Are you kind of known as like the bike lawyer in North Carolina? I mean, I'm guessing a lot of most attorneys don't, you know, come right out and say like, bikes are I'm passionate about, bicyclists and things like that.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope I'm known as that. Authoring the ride guide, I think was something that no one else has done. I saw a need for it because at the time there were not any. There now are some other materials that are good and helpful, but at the time there was nothing. And North Carolina doesn't have a lot of bicycling specific laws. We're left to interpret our motor vehicle laws, and so I saw the need for that book and put that together, and then came out with a second edition. I am referred often cases by other lawyers. They're usually the difficult cases that people don't want to jump into themselves or litigate themselves. But yeah, I think even certainly in the bicycling community and then even in the legal community, I think I definitely have over the it's almost 20 years now, established myself as really focusing on bicyclists and being the lawyer that puts all really such a huge chunk of my, I guess, pro bono and advocacy efforts into cycling versus other areas of law or other areas of personal injury law.
What are some of the key elements of the ride guide?
Well, I can tell you one of the provisions that we spent a really long time on, and I worked with some other people that I consider not lawyers, but kind of academics, I suppose, in bicycling law in North Carolina. And we spent a lot of time going back and forth about lane position. And so that's a big part because there's some statutes, but again, it doesn't really spell out specifically what bicyclists are allowed to do, and what the reality is often different from what the perception is, even among law enforcement and certainly drivers, motor vehicle drivers. So that's a big part of it. But, basically I went through the statutes and I made sure that I had everything in there that often comes up in my cases. And, then anything that I thought is frequently a sticking point for bicyclists. So, just their requirements under the law and their rights under the law as well.
Do you employ any strategies to help facilitate swift resolutions for your clients?
Well, yes, I think that we like to work up cases pretty thoroughly on the early end. And so as soon as we get a case, we do everything we can to investigate it. Speaking with witnesses, getting law enforcement files. In a lot of cases, we've been able to get traffic cameras, which have completely changed the picture of what, the people at the scene thought the case was about. And so yeah, we've definitely many times gotten a crash report that was just wrong and been able to prove it wrong. And, in that case, which if we hadn't done that early on, we might have had to file suit and gotten that information later, or maybe it wasn't even there at all at that point. But yeah, thoroughly investigating cases early on and connecting with the evidence and the witnesses that are there definitely helps early resolution.
Are there any common misperceptions that clients have about legal processes following a bicycle crash?
Oh yeah. There are so many. And I actually about to put out a set of videos kind of explaining some of the basics that I think people have a lot of misunderstanding about. But yeah, there's a lot of confusion about, how medical bills get paid when there's a crash, bicycle crash. A lot of confusion about, time frames, what to expect. And it's just a really confusing process for a lot of people. And it doesn't help that, insurance companies are sending all sorts of messages, and then you get other communications from your health insurance company. And so it's just a lot of information for people to juggle. And if they're hurt and possibly concussed, that makes it all the more difficult.
So if litigation is necessary, and maybe your clients are dealing with all sorts of effects of the accident or whatever, how do you prepare them for that litigation?
Yeah, well, we have a very deep conversation before we ever even venture into litigation.
Mm.
I explained to them that it's going to extend the time period quite a lot to get their case resolved, and if it has to go to trial, even longer, possibly appeal even longer. The costs that are involved, so we weigh all that out. There are times when the costs, it's cost prohibitive, or it just doesn't make sense for them financially, or if they want to get it over with. So. Um, what I tell them to expect is to be in more frequent communication with us, to obviously expect to have their deposition taken, and potentially open themselves up to a lot of information gathering from the other side, which, they wouldn't have had to do without filing a lawsuit. So there's definitely negatives about it, but there are some times when it's really the best choice.
Do you engage much with local legislators and authorities to improve bicycle safety?
Not so much directly. So for a long time, I was a board member of a statewide organization, Bike Walk NC. We have a director for that organization who is the front person with legislators. But as part of the board, I participate in the conversations and the debate about, um, the laws and how to advocate for bicycling laws that are good for the bicycling community. Locally, not as much. If there's a call to action or something like that, I would participate in that. But really, um, I think I'm best able to serve on more of the state level where the laws are made. Locally, it's more has to do with infrastructure funding and everything. And while I'm definitely a proponent of that, I have to choose my battles.
Hmm.
And so my choice is to work with the laws that I have to implement all the day, every day, and have probably a lot more understanding about than I do local politics.
I'm sure, avid cyclists have common frustrations with motorists, and I'm sure motorists who live in a community where cycling is popular probably have frustrations with cyclists. What are some things that motorists maybe should keep in mind when it comes to bicyclists' rights and safety?
Yeah, the thing that baffles me the most is just the urge to have to pass somebody who's on a bike. So I've been in so many situations where a motorist has gotten by me, but then been stopped by the light, and I end up being behind them for, maybe even a mile, half a mile, something like that. So, the idea being that just slow down a little bit and wait until it's safe to pass, and then, of course, make your pass, but don't try to rush a pass just so you can get behind, get around somebody. That's the biggest thing. And then be on the lookout for bicyclists, especially in area, well, not especially, but in a lot of areas where there's bike lanes, traffic, motor vehicle traffic may be backed up, but there may be somebody rolling down the bike lane. So, keep a lookout for bicyclists in more congested areas where there's stores and, pedestrians, things like that, where there might be people that aren't driving cars. Um, so that's a big thing. Stay off the phone. I think one of the biggest problems I see these days is distraction. I see more and more people just being hit from behind. And one case recently where we were able to get the traffic video, and the police officer thought the bicyclist was at fault. But once we saw the video, we saw that the driver just drove right into the back of the bicyclist and had plenty of time to go around them. And it seems like a clear distraction case. So we're seeing more of those. I'd love to see more bicyclists riding with cameras. I know they can be expensive, but there have been cases where we've been able to resolve the fault issue because the bicyclist had a video of what happened, and we were able to prove their side of the story more easily.
Is there any beyond having a camera? Is there any advice? We gave advice to motorists. What about to bicyclists to help kind of resolve maybe tension
To resolve tension,
or to
follow.
eliminate danger?
Yeah, yeah. Follow the rules, and you can only do so much. We don't advocate anyone ceasing to exist, but you're going to be out there on the road, so follow the rules. Don't run lights and stop signs and aggravate. Drivers who have a bad perception about bicyclists, don't feed into that. I always tell bicyclists too to use lights, wear really bright clothing. Well, it's not required by law. And to me, if somebody's looking, they're driving and they're actually looking at the road, they're going to see a cyclist, even if they're wearing black. But if the bicyclist is wearing bright colors and lights and whatnot, it takes away an excuse for the
Sure,
driver. They're
sure.
less able to say, oh, I just didn't see them and it's their fault because they were wearing a dark color.
I have one more question for you, but first, how can people
Yeah.
find out more about your firm and about bike law and everything else you have going on?
Well, Bike Law has a pretty extensive website. It's Bike Law, www.bikelaw.com. And we have a lot of blog posts and even merch on there for Bike Law. And my firm is jglawNC.com. And so both of those websites are available, and anyone's always welcome to email me at Ann at bikelaw.com. I'm happy to answer any questions. I give a lot of free advice to people that don't really need lawyers. So my firm and I, talk to people about the insurance process and, how to handle small claims, things like that.
Hmm.
So I don't, people shouldn't hesitate to reach out, even if they don't think they need a lawyer necessarily.
Okay, great. Hey, last question for you. As I mentioned,
Yeah.
you've been, practicing in the legal industry for about 30 years now, going on 30 years. What What advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out, maybe that they wouldn't learn in law school and could only learn if they had walked in your shoes?
Well, I would say to find an area that they're passionate about. And I know that that sounds probably kind of trite,
Mhm.
but you're going to building a successful practice. Well, okay, first of all, decide how you want to spend your time, because if you're going to litigate cases, you're going to work really hard and you're going to make sacrifices in other parts of your life. And so if you decide to litigate, um, you're not going to want to do that unless it's something you're passionate about. And so, whether it's protecting the elderly in nursing homes or rectifying medical errors or, representing victims of traffic violence or, anything, just find out what you're passionate about and pursue that, and just be prepared to work really, really hard for a long time. Definitely put in my time at a young age, and now it's a little bit more relaxed, but still working really hard, and it's okay because it's something that I love.
Okay, great. Hey, Anne, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time and all of your insights. Very interesting and informative. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Chad. Really great to talk to you. Have a great day.
You too. So long, everybody. Thanks for listening to 15 Minutes. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.